What's up, Jamers? It's the One Jame, and today we're rating all 5 charms from the Streets of New Capenna. We have a lot of things to go over, so I'm going to go over it as soon as I can. These cards are awesome, so let's go ahead and get started. We're talking the top 5 charms in order of what I think is the worst, going all the way up to the best. And of course, you can skip through the video if you want to see my best one, but feel free to stay till the end of the video, and thanks for liking the video and for subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get started. For the 5th one, the worst one I think, right now, it is, you called it, Cavalry Sharp. Now, I think for the record that this card is a lot better than I first thought it was, and what you think of it as well. So let's talk about this. It's a 3-mana charm, of course, all of them are 3 mana. This one is Naya colors. Instant, choose one. Cavalry Charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. That is a Kibera takedown type card. This can be useful if you go wide, and also you can kind of get them in combat, things like that, with your damage spell. Now, if it's your own turn, I think this second mode is better. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Now, this is probably better than the first mode if you're in combat and you're swinging and they choose to do a very good block and block for the creature. That is the same power as you have toughness, and then you blow them out with this +1/+1. This can also play around Meathook Massacre if you have a board and then you leave 3 mana up and they Meathook Massacre for exactly the highest number of toughness that you have, and then you +1/+1 all of your creatures and blow them out. So your opponent will always have to keep in mind with their Meathook Massacre that they should do it for 1 more than they thought than they should. This second mode plays around Meathook Massacre if they do that, and it also plays around things like Doomscar by them using their sweeper and then you making 2/1/1s after their sweeper on their end step. This pairs pretty well with cards like Wedding Announcement, where you make 2/1/1s. And then you eventually put +1/+1 counters on all your things, or not counters, but give everything +1/+1. And then your opponent sweeps your board, and then you go ahead and play this on end step. Now you have 4 damage coming to them on the next turn. So I think this is very powerful, but I think it's a little bit too narrow to be one of the top ones, and this is why I have this all the way down on the list. I think in the context of Standard that I know right now, this will go in the Naya deck, and there's also the Naya Demon Lord that we know about already, the Cat Demon. So that will pair well with making a bunch of creatures and tokens as well. So Wedding Announcement, I think, is very good in the deck. But one of the problems that this card solves in that Naya Humans deck is that it can give trample. Now, one of the big downfalls of that deck is that you can put 1/1 counters on things with Halana and Elena and Luminarch Aspirant and all these cards, but they don't have trample. So you can easily block them with cards like Shambling Ghast or and then Deadly Dispute, the Shambling Ghast, or block with an Eye Twitch or anything like that. It's very, very good to chump block that deck and then be able to finish everything off with a huge sweeper. This card solves that problem completely. No longer can you block with a 1/1 to your opponent's 8-power creature and expect to survive. You're going to get Cavalry Charmed and you're going to die. So I think it's a narrow in the fact that it goes to like a similar kind of deck than that. So that's why I have it at number 5. At number 4, we have Broker's Charm. This is the one that just came out. It is the Bant Charm. Now, this is 2 different shells that I think this card is in, and I really had a tough time on deciding whether to put this low on the list or have it higher, but the other 3 charms are just that good. So this card is very, very good, and I think it has the highest floor of all of them, but it has the lowest ceiling. What do I mean by that? This is the Bant Charm with green, white, and blue, and you can choose one target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. Now, this is really good in almost like a Bant mid-range deck, where you have a Seeker's Chariot and things like that, maybe Wandering Emperor, a little bit more creatures, to where you can utilize the +1/+1 and damage ability of this. Now, the other 2, I think, are a little bit better, where you can destroy an enchantment. I don't know why this also doesn't say destroy an artifact, but maybe in the comments you can tell me why it doesn't say artifact. Maybe it's something about the lore or something. But destroy an enchantment, which is very relevant against Naya runes and against decks playing Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Other than that, I think it's a pretty narrow, but the highest floor, and what I mean about this, is that you draw 2 cards. Now, this is an instant speed divination, which is great. It's amazing. If you don't need to use that damage or the destroy an enchantment, you can just draw 2 cards, which is still really, really strong. And in a Bant ramp style deck that might need to draw cards and start churning a little bit more cards to try to get to the big heavy hitters like Coma or Jinkataxias, anything like that, that you might want to just draw your cards and try to get to that. But you can destroy a creature or enchantment in the meantime in a little bit of a worse ability. So I think with that said, we're going to have this at number 4. And number 3, this starts getting into the, like, what do you think is better than the other one? And this is just my personal opinion. I think the next one is Riveteers Charm at number 3, coming in hot with the Jund Charm. Black, red, and green. For an instant, choose one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Now, this is a really good ability, and this has already been done at 3 mana with a card like Soul Shatter. Soul Shatter does the same thing for 2 and a black, easily splashable. This card is obviously less splashable, but it has the same exact text. In a Goldspan Dragon format, this effect is really good and already makes it a 1, 2, or 3 copies of this card in your 75 if you're playing Constructed. Now, looking at the second ability, exile the top 3 cards of your library until your next end step. You may play those cards. Now, it doesn't say play one of those cards. It doesn't say that you could have to cast the cards. It says you can play those cards, which means you hit a land and 2 spells and then play all of them, which is the reason why I have this over Broker's Charm. I think this is a little bit better than draw 2 cards. This and drawing 2 cards is kind of similar in a way, even though this could draw 3 cards if you can cast them all or play a land from it. But having this target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker is much better than just killing an enchantment or having a situational deal damage equal to its power ability that Broker's Charm has. And you can also exile target player's graveyard. Now, the floor of this card at exiling a graveyard isn't necessarily the best, but it could come in handy with some of the next charms that we have in some decks that we think that will be played in this new Streets of New Capenna format. Now, exiling the top 3 cards when your opponent doesn't want to play into the sacrifice is very strong. Say your opponent has a Goldspan Dragon, and they want to play that Goldspan Dragon, but you have Jund mana up, and they know you have this Riveteers Charm. Do they play the Goldspan Dragon knowing it's going to get sacrificed because they don't want you to draw 3 cards, or do they not play it, and then you no longer have to use this sacrifice ability of this card, then you can just end step, exile 3 cards. Cool, I can play those cards. Next turn, draw for turn, play a land from the exile, play your other 2 cards from exile. Now your opponent's so far behind because they didn't play the Goldspan Dragon. So this card puts your opponents in a really, really tough spot, and I think it deserves at least 3 copies in the 75 of Jund decks, if not, some people are talking about playing 4 in the main deck, but this card's very, very strong, but you're going to see that the next 2 cards, I believe, are even stronger. So you're going to watch to the end of the video to watch those 2. We're going to go ahead and go over to Maestro's Charm. This is the Grixis Charm, and I think this is my favorite charm. I don't think it's the best one. I think it's the second best, but it's my personal favorite. I like mid-range decks if you're a fan of this channel, so you know that already. This is a blue, black, and red charm. Choose one, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put one of those cards into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. That is really, really strong. Think of a card like Bloodthirsty Adversary. Pay 2 mana, pay 3 more, cast another card from your graveyard. This can get that Bloodthirsty Adversary into your hand from the top 5 cards. This isn't the top 2 cards. It's not the top 3 cards. It's not even the top 4 cards. It's the top 5 cards of your library. That's great card selection. You can't ask for any better than that, right? That's like Memory Deluge level, if not better. Even then, you can mill over Memory Deluge with this card and have it available in your graveyard for later if you want to do that yourself. You can also mill over cards like Malevolent Hermit and cast that 2/2 flyer back from your graveyard. And also get that Bloodthirsty Adversary in your hand to fuel it up for next turn. The graveyard synergies in this card are outrageous, and just this one ability, I think, puts this way higher up in the list. But the second mode is each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Now, this doesn't seem like it's very strong, but imagine if you are playing a card like Bloodthirsty Adversary. That means you're probably playing a more aggressively slanted mid-range deck, maybe a mid-range / control deck with a bunch of removal spells. But this Maestro Charm is also a removal spell, which we'll talk about later. But speaking of this second ability, you can really kill your opponent out of nowhere with this. You're playing against a control opponent, you go end step, lose 3 life, gain 3 life. What do? Take the 3? Or they take the 3. Then next turn, you play Bloodthirsty Adversary. You pay the 3 mana, you cast Maestro's Charm again from your graveyard, deal 3 damage to them, gain 3 life. And then all of a sudden, your bloodthirsty adversary now has an additional attack point because you paid 3 mana into this, and now you have another 3/3 haste creature, and now that you've just done 9 damage to them over the course of an end step and a main phase and a combat phase. It's a lot of damage. Now, if you're playing an aggressively slanted mid-range deck, I think you'll be using this mode more often than you think. We have the last mode, which is Maestro Charm deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, which, if it didn't have this much damage, I think I'd put Riveteers Charm over this, but 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker, I think is better than opponent sacrifices something. Yes, you could have something that has 6 loyalty as a planeswalker or something, but 5 damage gets rid of basically anything you want. Yeah, it can't deal with a Renin 7 Treefolk token some of the time, but unless their creature is that big, 5 damage kills almost everything in the format, if not everything. So the fact that you can look at 5 cards and get a card, and kill your opponent out of nowhere, and kill your opponent's creatures, this is one of the best mid-range cards I've seen in a very, very long time. Speaking of mid-range decks, we have the last one, and I feel like it's the best one. I don't know if there can be one better than this, but I think we have one. It's the Esper Charm. This is Obscura Charm. It is a white, blue, and black charm. It's an instant, of course. Choose one. Return target multicolored permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now, this has multicolored permanent. This doesn't say creature. This brings a couple things in mind for me. This is Nico Eris. This is Kaido Shizuki. You can bring those cards back from your graveyard, which is very, very strong. You can also bring cards back like Silver Quill Silencer, and I think this is best played in an Esper mid-range deck. There's that new legendary creature in Esper colors that is a 1/4 with Ward 1 and flying, and you can draw cards and discard cards with the new ability of the card. So this can even fuel the Obscura Charm as well. You can draw cards and discard Kaido, and then the next turn bring Kaido back to the battlefield tapped with Obscura Charm. I think this is very strong. As an instant, even that ability right there is amazing. When your opponent goes to kill your board because you're playing a tempo deck, they want to kind of kill your board as fast as possible. You can hold Obscura Charm up and either counter target instant or sorcery spell that next mode on their card, or just let your things die and then just bring your Silver Quill Silencer or other multicolored card, or even a Kaido back from your graveyard on the end step to kind of keep the ball rolling and churning. Now, countering target instant or sorcery, that is an amazing card. Now, it can't counter things like Wandering Emperor and can't counter things like Meathook Massacre, but sometimes countering that crucial removal spell or crucial sweeper like a Doomscar can make you win. It can mean winning the game rather than losing the game, of course. There's a lot of instant sorceries that you want to kill, especially when there's a big, huge 4-mana draw spells, 4-mana discard a card, make 2 treasure tokens. You can counter mill spells with this. You can counter a lot of things that you wouldn't think you'd be able to counter with this card. Not only that, if you didn't think that the returning things to the graveyard was good enough, or the countering spells was good enough, this also is a removal spell. If you played in Standards past, there was a card called Eliminate. It was 1 in the black, and you can kill target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. That is exactly this card. So not only is it a removal spell, not only is it a counter spell, which is everything you want to be doing in a tempo deck, tempo mid-range, but you also get to reanimate things. So I think this is the card that has the most relevant abilities for all 3 abilities. Yes, all of the other ones are really good. Riveteers Charm and Maestro Charm are amazing, but they have a mode that's kind of not as played a lot or a little bit more situational. I think Obscura Charm has the highest potential to be always really good than the other 4, and that's why I have this one as the top one. Now, if you like that, let me know if you like this content like this. I don't usually do this type of content, but make sure you let me know in the comments whether you'd like me to do more tier list things like this, and let me know whether you agree with me or disagree with me down in the comments. Feel free once again to leave this a comment or a like if you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one. And as always, peace.